Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. Thanks so much for joining us. Boy, do we have a lot to get into. Hand size. We'll talk about that and what it means. We'll also get into Jimmy G, Mitch Trubisky, Aaron Rodgers, a lot of stuff. And what about centers and free agent signings by the Steelers? That's all coming up. But the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Penguins, who are in position to do some damage in the postseason. So we think they're one of the top teams in the league, at least top 5 point-wise. Here to discuss is your panel. We have Josh Yohe with us from The Athletic, who covers the Penguin and does a tremendous job. Andrew Fillipponi from the PM team, 93.7 The Fan, and the Pony Express program on CBS Radio nationally. And Mark Kaboly from The Athletic, who covers the Steelers, was just in the Combine. Lots to get into, but Josh, I'm going to start with you and the Penguins. So here they are. They're going to get in the playoffs. We know that. But we also know that teams are going to make moves. Teams have more cap space available. Teams have more things to offer. JT Miller is out there, dangled potentially by Vancouver. Jim Rutherford's out there. What's the likelihood of the Penguins dealing with him to get JT Miller, who's their leading scorer right now, having maybe his best year?
Well, Bob, I'm sure the Penguins would love to bring JT Miller into town. He's not because he's a local kid, by the way, but because he's become one of the really good players in the league. He's a legitimate point-per-game player, and there aren't many of those guys, and he can play center or wing. So, yeah, he'd look great in black and gold. The only problem is about 10 to 15 other teams, I would guess, are also interested in him. And those teams all have more people to offer in terms of prospects. They have younger players to offer in trades that Vancouver would covet. They have more draft picks to offer. So it's a really tough spot for Ron Hextall. The Penguins are good. They're really good. And if you saw the game in Tampa the other night, you know how good they're capable of being. This is a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. Hextall will probably add something. I wouldn't expect as big of a name as JT Miller. It's not that he doesn't want to. I just think he's pretty handcuffed by the current situation in the organization. And if JT Miller goes to the Rangers, and I've heard that is a very real possibility, that could shift the power in this potential playoff matchup. It's probably going to be Penguins-Rangers in the first round. The Penguins don't want JT Miller going to New York.
Pony?
No, and that's where Jim Rutherford would come in. I mean, this is one of those situations where I actually miss the old general manager. I think Hextall's good at his job. I think he's patient. I think he's more conservative. I think he likes to build it, a process. Don't do anything that's emotional, knee-jerk reaction. Don't do something that might benefit you short-term but damage you long-term. I think he's a very logical, rational general manager. But the problem is that kind of team building should not apply to this current Penguins team. We don't know about the futures of Brian Rust, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. So for me, this is the season where you would put all your eggs in one basket. And even though Rutherford would not have a lot to trade, as Josh pointed out, he would find a way to get a deal done. That was probably his best trait or skill as a GM, and I'm just scared that Ron Hextall doesn't have the sense of urgency that we saw in the last Penguins GM.
Yeah, but the thing is he's probably been told not to have that sense of urgency as well, right? I know his time in Philly, he was kind of conservative as well, but I'm sure when he was hired, he was told to go about it a certain way, and a certain way wasn't the mortgagers' first-round picks. That's the one thing he does have this year, and you're pretty sure that
but
he's
it's going to be like 27th or 28th, Mark. It won't be a very good first-round pick.
And let me tell you something about Rutherford. Something tells me, I don't know, I'm just going on a limb here, that he's not going to cut the Penguins a little bit of a deal. You know what I'm saying? If it's between the Rangers and the Penguins and it's close, something tells me he might be going to the Rangers instead of the Penguins for JT Miller.
Yeah, but Mark, you don't have these guys locked up. I mean, if that was the message when he took the job, I could understand that. That was a year and a half ago. Now you've got star players, and they might all be – they could all conceivably – they probably won't, but they could all be gone after this year. So there is no tomorrow for these Penguins, Mark.
Yeah, but you still what are you going to give to get him? I know you said Rutherford wouldn't find a way to get it done, but how do you find a way to get that done? You don't have much in the farm system. You don't have much of current players. If you get somebody to take Kapanen from you, sure, go ahead and do it. But who wants him right now? I don't think
he traded Rob Scuderi for Trevor Daley. He was an incredible trader. He traded crap for gold. I mean, that was what the guy did. So he would find a way to get it done.
Well, guys, there's only one real thing. There's only one real thing that Ron Hextall can do here. and he doesn't want to trade the first-round pick. Guess what? He might have to.
You have to.
And I happen to think this is the year when he should. Yeah, you don't want to trade that first-round pick every season, but like Pomp said, this isn't some top 10 pick you're talking about. The window is clearly not going to be open for that much longer for Crosby and Malkin, but this team is better than I think any of us thought they had a right to be. And why wouldn't you try to help them get over the
Josh,
top?
where's Brian Burke holding the guy's feet to the fire? What's his job? To go to fancy dinners and to shake people's hands? What is he doing over there, Josh Yohe?
I don't know how much power Berkey really has. I actually talked with him the other day, and he said, yeah, we want to do something, but, there's only so much we can do right now. Those were his words. And Ron Hextall, this is up to Ron. It might take him out of his comfort zone. I think he likes to let prospects marinate and build an organization, and that's great. But I agree with you, Andrew, that this isn't the time for that. This is absolutely the time to be aggressive.
The other thing is their prospects who they have to offer aren't doing very well. I checked out what's happening down there with Nathan Lagaré and Sam Poole, and both of whom were supposed to be, big contributors here by now, I thought. Josh, and they're not doing anything. So if it's not them, who do you trade along with a first-round pick? And that's not going to be enough when you have 10 to 15, as you describe, other teams interested.
No, and that's the problem, Bob. And, for all of us who saw those two in training camp, Lagaré and Samuel Pullen, they were awful in training camp. They haven't been particularly good in Wilkes-Barre. So if we know that other teams around the league know that too, that's absolutely a concern. P.O. Joseph is a guy who certainly could be traded. I don't think this regime likes him as much as the Jim Rutherford regime did. So that's a possibility. But that first-round pick, if they're going to bring in an impact player, it almost has to be a first-round pick. And yeah, the trade Kapanen would be great, but the rest of the league has eyeballs too. They know what he's done this season. His value has dropped significantly.
All right, we got to go to a break. Go ahead, real quick.
What about playing better? You got Zucker coming back. You have Matheson coming back. You have Kapanen playing, potentially playing better. How about those guys? They're allowed to play better, and you might be better off going with that rather than trading with somebody.
Yeah, but if you stand still, other people are going to move right ahead of you, and they're already ahead of you, some of these teams. And if you're going to make – the East is as tough as any conference. It's not the West is not tough compared to the East. So I think you got to make moves when you have an opportunity, and that's going to be fun to watch over the next couple of weeks. When we come back, though, we're going to talk about something that will happen in 10 days. It's NFL free agency, and I think we'll get a picture about what the Steelers have planned in regard to the draft based on what they do or don't do in free agency. It's coming up next right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown.